Unexpected upsets, and is Michigan on the hot seat? Grab a drink and join us on this week's Tailgate. Hey, how y'all doing? I'm Luke.
I'm Michael.
I'm Dennis.
And welcome to the Tailgate.
Yeah, welcome to the Tailgate. And before we kick things off tonight, we just want to take a word for our sponsor, which is Explore Tours, which if you're in the Nashville area or Middle Tennessee area and are interested in the story of Nashville or just wanting to see sights and sounds of Middle Tennessee, check them out at Explore Tours because they got a tour for you. So this past weekend, we had some incredibly fun games.
Yes.
Like just they were very competitive. Some of them were straight up shootouts. Some games were shootouts that we weren't expecting to be shootouts.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one of the best games that we had that just felt like two teams playing like just good football on both sides of the ball was your game of the week that you picked from this past week.
Yeah, so UCLA and Arizona. It was a good day. I mean, Arizona wins 27-10, but it was really kind of it seemed like a lot more even of a matchup than what the score was. Interesting enough, UCLA actually played three quarterbacks, and they've been kind of taking three quarterbacks, playing a few of them or playing one or two of them a game. There was a redshirt junior, Ethan Garbers, and a true freshman, Dante Moore. However, in this game, both were injured and couldn't actually finish the game. So a redshirt junior, Colin Schlee, finished out the game. I mean, it was an interesting game, kind of back and forth. The Arizona quarterback, which Arizona, if you haven't been paying attention to them, they've beaten three straight teams who are ranked at game time. So the past three games that they've done that, and this win brought them into the top 25. So they're ranked 23. But their quarterback, Noah Fafita, he's 25 of 32, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did have an interception, 93.7 QBR. And then they had another 129 on the ground. Kicker was 2 for 2. But UCLA they weren't that great. They missed 2 field goals kind of right off the bat.
Yeah.
They had kind of a slow start, interception at the very beginning. But yeah, it really was a very competitive game. UCLA did drop out of the top 25. This is the third loss of the season. So next week they actually have Arizona State. And then they head to Memorial Coliseum to face USC.
Okay.
Arizona is going to be playing Colorado next week, so that'll be kind of fun. And then
Arizona's going to win that one.
Oh, yeah, 100%. 100%.
No upset alert there.
Yeah, none. And then they're actually going to play Utah the next week and then finish out at Arizona State.
Honestly, I feel like that would be a really interesting one.
Arizona, Utah?
Yeah,
that'll be a really
that'll be
good
an
one.
interesting one. Colorado, getting off topic, Colorado, I think, has kind of won their last game. I don't think that they're going to be doing much, but
no. But that's a different topic for a different topic for another day.
Yep.
Another game that I'd say was played well on both sides of the ball by both teams was what I picked, which was Missouri versus Georgia. Again, Georgia pulled the win out there. And it's hard to beat Georgia at Athens,
very hard,
especially since Kirby Smart started there. But I mean, you have Georgia winning 30-21. But if you look at the stat sheet, the teams almost look identical.
Yeah.
You're like 21. Both of them have 21 first downs. They both have over 200 yards in passing. They both have about 130, 150 yards of rushing. So their offenses are pretty much doing exactly what you expect. They're almost mirror matches of each other. Where it gets really interesting is the fact that Missouri did what they shouldn't have done. They threw interceptions.
I mean, it was just that one that literally kind of just sealed the deal.
You can't you can't make mistakes. Georgia's not gonna beat themselves. So you have to play better than them, or at least at the same level as them without making mistakes.
True.
And just beat them that way, just from attrition. And it just didn't happen. Missouri had a great chance to do that, but they just weren't able to capitalize. I think there were some questionable calls that were made. I'm interested in if you know what the actual rule is there for the pass interference that was reviewed, and how that was able to be reviewed, and you know why that's the case, comment down below. That'd be great, because I was very baffled by that, and I think we all were baffled by that.
If you give us any reason, we're probably going to call your bluff, because you can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, it just really just came off as some home cooking, and SEC refs are already terrible as they are. They're easily the worst ref officiating crew in the country right now.
Yep.
But it is really looked like, with the way that they've treated Georgia and the way they've treated Alabama, there's a lot of home cooking going on. And I think that kind of leads us
home cooking.
Yeah. Well, and I think that kind of leads us a little into the final game of the week that we had talked about, which was yours, Dennis.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes with that. Alabama kind of winning 42-28, but there's one particular call I really feel like it kind of set the tone of difference, like going into the beginning of the fourth quarter, where Jaden Daniels was actually, I personally feel like it was a target call. It easily could have been called that way, but he was kind of like smacked right below the face mask, and he was just knocked out of the game. Don't get me wrong, I was right about one of my calls about him getting another hit.
True.
But like, it's not the way I wanted to get him to go. Like, I think he's a tremendous athlete. I think he's, like, he could easily be one of my Heisman favorites personally, but it really kind of set the tone of difference at the end of the fourth quarter, or towards the entire fourth quarter, where Bama could not move. Like, they could not. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of throwing from Bama all game. They only threw for about 219 yards, but just a rushing game was definitely LSU just had no answer for that. Milroe set up a record for Bama quarterbacks, having 4 touchdowns, 155 yards.
Well, yeah, I mean, like all of their touchdowns were rushing touchdowns, right? Yeah, which is just crazy. Like, I mean, can't do that and at Bama either. But I think we were talking about it, going back to some of that penalizing stuff and whatnot. There was only 2 live ball penalties that were called against Alabama that game, and one of them was actually consequential, which was that hit, which was literally just roughing the passer. Like, the other one was a hold call that was literally called on the final second of the second half or second quarter, which was worthless.
Right.
So.
And that's the thing about that targeting call, the roughing the passer call, is we see so many players getting called for targeting for so much less.
Yeah.
And so many, I think back to the Colorado game.
True.
Where little shoulder shiver.
Yeah.
And he's out of the game. And yet here's a blatant helmet to the underside, to the head and neck area, which is the big thing, with the crown of the helmet. I mean, it's just one of those things, and especially when you knock out the front runner for Heisman.
Mind you, he literally had 219 yards himself passing, and he actually 163 yards rushing.
Yeah.
So he was
the offense.
Yeah. Air or ground. He was able to do anything. Yeah. And they really didn't have an answer for him. Like, they were down 14 at the time, but they easily, I feel like, could have won the game still.
14 is nothing for an offense like LSU.
No problem at all.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing that's interesting about it. It's just like the game's final score makes it seem like there was a lot of domination. It makes it seem like the Tennessee Bama game, where it's just like that second half was just completely dominated by Bama. Really wasn't the case in this game. It was more or less like there was definitely some better adjustments that were made by Bama in the second half, but LSU knew how to move down the field, and Daniels knew how to manipulate that defense. So it's just it is interesting. Granted, it's the what ifs. You can't play the what if scenarios with it. LSU lost the game. That's all that you can say about it.
Unfortunately.
Yep, and you got to move on.
Move on.
Yeah.
But one team in the SEC that did win their game also had an awesome play that you highlighted to us earlier.
Yeah, it's actually Ole Miss, Texas A&M. But the Ole Miss player, Trey Harris, actually had just an amazing catch. He was actually able to catch it just right off the sideline. One hand. He was stretched. I was like, he ran me like Odell Beckham, like when he got kind of recognized for those catches.
You mean Marvin Harrison Jr.?
I don't think Marvin Harrison has done those kind of catches yet.
Marvin Harrison Williams Jr.
Not this year.
I don't think he's done those catches yet, but like I wouldn't be surprised if he does one anytime soon.
No, it was a pretty catch just to maintain control. I mean, he snagged that out of the air. Like, that's the thing, is one-handed.
Like, he twisted his body to be able to kind of like it wasn't like, hey, towards the outside line. He literally twisted his whole body all around, and it was definitely a nice catch.
Yeah, which is incredibly impressive.
So definitely an impressive catch. Now, something that's a little less impressive has been something that's going on for the past two weeks or so, I think. And that's what's going on in Ann Arbor right now.
Ooh.
So, do you know where Michael went?
No, he disappeared.
Oh yeah.
I'm just getting a better vantage. I mean, vantage point. I'm not. I got these from a really cool dude. He was just he just resigned from Michigan.
Yours don't light up in the corner.
Huh? Oh, I have to turn something on. Hold on.
Yeah. No, it's not recording.
Oh, I don't need to record another angle of this podcast, anyways.
Yeah. No, I think that we have really tried to kind of let some information come back. Like I said, this has been going on for about 2 weeks. We've tried to let information come out. We don't want to kind of jump on something right at the beginning. We kind of want to see what's going on. But it is getting very
spicy.
Very spicy. Now, as an Ohio State fan,
even spicier.
It's even spicier. It really could be the implosion of the Big Ten if what Michigan's saying that they have is true. Yeah. Now, who knows at this point? But it's so interesting. I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on?
Cancel the Big Ten. You just have the Pac-12 for another year.
I mean,
cancel it.
You cancel the Big Ten.
Just cancel it for a year. Have the Pac-12 stick around for another year.
I was about to say, can USC and UCLA be like, hey, Pac-12, let's can we come back?
Probably. So. There's gonna be like about 8 other teams that can be doing this too.
I mean, I think the one. I mean, the reason why we've been waiting just is more just to not come across as like we're just going to jump on a hype bandwagon or whatnot and just really dive into the drama of it, but wait and see, like, weed through some of the nonsense that has been coming out. I mean, like, you had the entire thing with Menace to Sports who planted a fake story about the PI and the FBI and all that stuff with Ryan Day's family and stuff like that, and it took and it was funny. It was. But what people don't realize is that he was an ex-Ohio State coach, and so he was literally just trolling Michigan fans.
He was.
And he was doing it intentionally. If you know his channel, which is an awesome channel, he has incredibly good breakdowns of Ohio State film and stuff like that.
Very good breakdowns.
And so,
but
you're
not biased.
No, well, I said it.
I know, but I'm just saying his agreement is like, yes,
and he'll send them to you for 2 monthly payments of $99.99,
and it comes to you from Stallions. I mean, Incorporated.
No.
But as it's all just continued to uncover and unveil itself and whatnot, and just a lot of undeniable proof that's come out. I mean, I think the biggest smoking gun for me was Connor Stallions being on the sideline of Central Michigan with the recording device, like clearly a recording device and his sunglasses. And like, it's one thing to buy tickets to opposing teams' games and record it there in the stands, which again, still not okay. It's against the rules. It's not illegal. It's just against the rules. Like it's just, and that's what we have to remember. But it's still
not going to jail. But
there could be
consequences.
There could be consequences for that. I mean, you very much are not going to be hireable in the sport that you love to play and or love to be a coach in or whatever. And but the fact that he made his way on the sideline, and I've also been reading some reports that the guy standing next to Stallions is also one of his accomplices, that they've been coaching together for a while,
right?
And so, how deep does the hole go? We don't know. Like it's just one of those things. Like it's a weird thing when it comes to that entire situation, but that I think Michigan's going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And especially Harbaugh. I don't think he's going to survive this personally, but it's going to take some time for it to come out because I don't personally think that the Big Ten commissioner is going to actually step in, and I think he's going to threaten, but I don't think he's going to actually step in and do something.
All bark, no bite.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you can't really blame him if you look at the job of commissioner. It is not his job is to maintain the Big Ten.
Yep.
And when you have a program like Michigan, who's one of the top 5 in revenue, They may bring in a lot of money. They're not just supporting themselves in the Big Ten. They're bringing money into every
NCAA,
school,
every
NCAA.
school.
I mean,
Yep.
they're known as one of the bigger programs
Right.
in college
so,
football.
So the Big Ten commissioner is not just going to lay the hammer down until he knows everything, and that's his job. That's what he's supposed to do. And a lot of Ohio State fans, I'm probably going to get some flack being an Ohio State fan saying this kind of stuff, but it's like that is his job, is to kind of take care of the Big Ten. And I'll be honest, as an Ohio State fan, Michigan not doing well is not good for the Big Ten. It's not good for Ohio State. How long did we have Big Ten is not that great of a conference because all you've got is Ohio State and everybody else. That's not good. And we need the Big Ten. So there's this part of me that kind of hopes that Michigan, is able to get through this, is able to do that. And then if I step out of my hey, you're a co-host on a podcast and you think logically, and I step into my fandom, I'm like, well, I mean, I hope that they
even as a fan though, wouldn't you want to be able to say hey, we beat a Michigan team that was supposedly really highly ranked, really good, or 100%. As an Ohio State fan, would you rather be we beat up a Michigan team, but they're 3 and 9?
Right? Yeah, they're
I'd rather have bragging 100%. Rights on the team. Your only loss that was by us.
Well, and
I'd rather have those bragging rights.
And that's the thing is the past 20 years, it's been. I mean, we've had bragging.
It's been the Ohio State game at Michigan.
Really has. And so it's definitely one of those things where it's the past 2 wins. It was okay, so they win. I can handle that. I can take that. But then there is this other side of it where it's
he lost his hair about it.
Yeah, I yanked it all out. But the other side of that is looking at it from this side. If it comes out that they were cheating and that they did know our signs and that they did know what we were going to do, then it kind of pisses me off a little bit. Yeah. It kind of makes me a little angry that it's you didn't have enough respect for this game, for this rivalry, that you're going to cheat to win.
Now, if you look at it on the Stallion side, how do you feel about that?
Let's go ride a horse.
That's true.
Take a ride. So.
Well, and I mean, it's just the entire thing of the integrity of the game. You have to bring that's I get why the commissioner's not going to, more than likely not going to do anything, stuff like that. Right. But the other part of it is, at what point does it become about the integrity of the game versus the money or the monetary value that is being brought by a particular program? And
I think now with so many changes going on in the past couple of years, I feel like just NCAA is now becoming more about money over the actual, the love of the sport, the history of the sport, anything like that.
Well, and I feel like the Big Ten might be more apt to move next year when you've got other big programs that do bring a lot of money. Oh yeah. Into their commission, you've got or into their conference and stuff like that, with Oregon and UCLA and USC, stuff like that. That by itself is going to add a lot of value to the Big Ten. They
easily can replace Michigan at all. Any of those teams single-handedly.
But this year,
right now,
this year right now, they kind of need Michigan.
So what we're saying is one of those SEC teams or somebody or Ohio State needs to step up and knock Michigan out, or Penn State.
Or Penn State.
That could be cool.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. Definitely not USC, though.
No. USC has already imploded for the year.
Yes.
They have already, what is it, their third loss?
Third loss.
They fired the Grinch.
He stole the USC season.
He did. Yeah. He stole it before Christmas.
Yeah.
Didn't even make it to Christmas. But no, it's USC. USC is... Man, Lincoln Riley, I don't know what's going on with him. He's never had a season coaching between Oklahoma and USC where he's not lost at least 2 games.
Mind you, I feel like they're going to have at least 4 losses.
I think by the end of this year, they're going to have 4. They're going to go to a bowl game that some bowl game is going to be really happy to have him. I'll just say that.
Sure.
It's going to be,
They're going to be happy to have Caleb Williams.
Yes.
Well, that's provided he doesn't opt out.
If he doesn't opt out. But that's definitely my implosion for this week is just USC.
And the entire team.
You feel bad, especially as we just got done talking about Big Ten, and they're about to enter into our Big Ten. We need them doing good, and unfortunately they're not. So Lincoln Riley, step up.
Well, and I was listening to a lot of Oklahoma fans and stuff like that before the season started, and they're just just wait. Riley keeps on talking about this supposed elite defense or a much improved defense. he never had a good defense at Oklahoma. So he just likes to sell you, butterflies and unicorns and dreams.
Like, keep in mind, like when he had USC's defense last year, like they're actually, I believe, like ranked 87 nationally.
Yeah.
And this year, upon firing of Grinch, I think you were saying earlier, Michael, like 117.
They're
like
really
they're 119.
They're 119.
So like I hadn't looked at it since the stats had updated from this past weekend, but like there's only 133 teams or whatever, and
I think it's 131.
131 in Division 1 play. And you're 117 out of that, like
that's to go from 87
119. See,
119.
I just messed myself up.
They were 94th last year.
Last year, okay. Then I got my numbers mixed too. Then
they were 94th last year, and currently they are 119.
And they were like talking like, hey, we had a lot of transfer players that came in on defense.
They had 9 transfer players.
Yeah, and I was like, all right, cool. Like even if he stayed around 80, like it's still like, hey,
the last 6 games they have allowed 265 points. Only one time it was against Utah when they lost. They allowed less than 40. And it was 34. And so
barely.
They've lost 3 of the past 4. I mean,
they Cal have 49 points.
But they did get that. They did get that cornerback as soon as.
Oh, they got a cornerback. Oh, great!
Well,
he can cover the whole defense.
He's like a 5-star that as soon as they fired Grinch, like an hour later, he committed to USC.
I thought that was like just beautiful timing.
Yep.
He's like, oh, he's gone? All right, I'll sign with you guys.
Yeah.
Like,
I like what you guys got cooking now.
Right, yeah, now that he's gone.
You can't get much worse than this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm in.
So, but to move on, we'll get off USC a little bit. We'll talk about some bad reffing that happened. Now, one of the interesting upsets that happened this past weekend was Oklahoma State beating Oklahoma, and partly because of a non-PI call. So it was towards the end of the game, I believe, that there was an Oklahoma player going in the end zone, and the Oklahoma State player essentially tackled this guy in the end zone. I think it was Stoops that was going for the catch. And I mean, he never had a chance to catch the ball. I think the guy was pulling him down before the ball even got to the end zone. But at that, I think they ended up kicking a field goal on that drive. And that pass interference, if it had been called correctly, it would have been first and goal at like the 2-yard line. Yeah. So, I mean, that in terms of a poor reffing, I mean, you can look at something like the Daniels call and go, that was a targeting. This one is, again, another one of those where you're just looking at it going, the guy was pulling him down. He was tackling before he had the ball. 100% that's pass interference. Again, I don't like saying that a call wins or loses the game. However, this makes a huge change in that game, scoring a touchdown instead of kicking a field goal.
I mean, it changes Oklahoma's entire season.
Yes.
True. Like, I mean, they that with that loss, they immediately lose out on the Big 12.
They
so,
do.
Which, I mean.
Yeah, I don't even know where the Big 12 is now. Like, I don't know who's standing atop it.
I mean, supposedly Texas, but I don't even believe that's the case anymore.
For how long?
Yeah.
Shoot, you got me, man. I guess as good as any now.
Yep.
Like,
now, the bad coaching, we'll go back and we'll start talking to Colorado again. Now, Colorado is
one of your favorite segments of this
favorite. I love the coaching. I love coaching. I don't like bad coaching. And that's what we're going to say. So,
you love talking about it.
Specifically Colorado.
Especially Colorado. And that's, again, I do like Colorado. Like, I don't – that's the thing is I do like Colorado. I like Deion Sanders. I feel like they're starting to get a little in over their head.
Yeah.
I think that their start kind of has them feeling felt a little high on their horse.
Yeah.
And but it was towards the end of the first half. There was 50 seconds to go. They were on their own 5-yard line. So instead of running out the clock, they threw 2 passes. And after 2 incompletes, Oregon State called a timeout, forcing them to punt. The Beavers then get a short field and score with 20 seconds to go. So instead of going into halftime down 7-3 because of poor coaching,
I'm just trying to make sure I get this. Whatever it is that you're.
I'm going to turn this way so you can't steal it.
I just want.
But instead of going into halftime down 7-3, they end up going into halftime down 14-3. And it was just one of those things where you're going 50 seconds left. Maybe you try one pass. Okay, you don't get it. Run the ball, take the clock out. But you didn't do that. It ends up costing you the game. So, Dion, you got my bad coaching again. I think that's the second or third time this year that you've gotten it. I'm sorry. I love you.
Like you don't like him.
I do. I love you, Dion.
I mean, he's definitely counting all of these. That's probably our new subscriber this week.
Keep the receipts.
Keep them
keep
receipts.
The receipts. I want to be able to talk good about you.
Yep, especially next year. That'd be great.
That would be fun.
It would be awesome.
Interesting next year.
Yep.
So.
It will be. I mean, there's a lot of next year we're gonna potentially see a completely different coaching landscape, partially due to one of the teams that actually performed an upset this past weekend that I called. Good old Clemson.
Yep.
We don't know if Dabo's going to be there next year. I think, but Clemson did pull out the win against Notre Dame.
They did, like you called.
Yep. They basically did nothing in the second half. They really dominated the first half, but the second half they were just lucky to have gotten a pick six.
Right.
Their offense couldn't do anything. Their defense basically ran that entire game. If I had known that Shipley was going to be out for that game, I probably wouldn't have called the upset.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful that they still found a way to make an upset, even though Shipley didn't play. So that's impressive that they did that. But
that second half was just like them holding on for dear life.
Exactly.
I mean, it was so painful to watch.
Well, yeah, and you've got. I mean, Notre Dame just consistently just made mistake after mistake after mistake.
I feel like once Hartman keeps going one mistake, he's like he can't just erase it. He can't stop thinking about it, and then basically just
we call it the Milton effect.
Oh yes,
yeah.
I mean, you got to get started first.
Yeah. Well, that's true. So, we might not call it that by the end of the year. Who knows? Well, we might call it the Hartman effect at the end of the year.
I mean,
I think we probably should.
It's probably at this point because it's closer to the end of the year now. But just like you mentioned, there was a couple other upsets that were were kind of unexpected. I mean, you had Oklahoma State. They again, even with that PI that wasn't called, there was still you sent us another thing earlier too of one of Oklahoma's coaches or one of their staffers pushing or whatnot a Oklahoma State player.
The Oklahoma State quarterback was running out of bounds. I think after an interception that he was chasing down the defender. I mean something, and an Oklahoma State or an Oklahoma
staffer,
whomever,
somebody
on the sideline gave him a little shoulder.
Yeah, that should have been a personal. That should have been
unsportsmanlike
he leaned into it. You could tell.
He leaned into it. So it was.
That should have been
and again, one play doesn't determine the
game.
Nope,
it doesn't.
So that pass interference. There's lots of plays that happen during the game. That's just the big one that we saw.
Yeah,
that was out in the open. So
yep. And so, but there was that. Again, you also had the other notable upsets. Again, upsets for the teams that played in them. They're not upsets in the sense of college football playoff.
Calm down.
So just take a chill pill. We had a conversation about this before we started recording.
I'm just saying, can you really be disappointed with some of these teams' losses?
Listen, we can be because
Florida did not maintain their streak.
No, they didn't. They actually were. They were doing really well, beating teams on their home turf. They had a really good home field advantage.
They beat Tennessee.
They did. We're going to move on from that because that's not what we're talking about. Because Arkansas secured their first SEC win this entire year against Florida at home, and Arkansas had an offensive coordinator that had never been a coordinator in any game prior to this game. That is by itself impressive. And so, I mean, Florida made a ton of mistakes. Arkansas capitalized on them. It's very clear that when KJ Jefferson has an offensive coordinator that's calling plays that make sense for the way he plays, they actually do well.
Which is going to happen when you have somebody as their first time that they're going to call plays. They're going to be pretty conservative and go, "Hey, what can my guy do?"
Yeah. Well, let's make sure I'm calling plays that actually make sense for his play style.
Right.
And the thing is, what's frustrating, I get it for Arkansas fans, is how many close games they've played all year. And if they had this offensive coordinator in, again, we're getting back into the what if scenarios, how many of those games could they have won? Yeah. They could have beat LSU. I mean, that would have been a huge win.
It would
It would have. And so Arkansas, you guys have a bright future. Just this year is not it.
Right.
But way to go, knocking out Florida.
Enjoy the Florida win.
And honestly, I'd be surprised if Florida actually wins another game this year. Honestly, they've got a pretty rough docket ahead of them. They've got to play Florida State. They've got to play Missouri. I'm trying to even think of who else they have to play, but there's a couple other teams.
Another one that's hard.
I don't feel like they're going to win any more games.
They're not going to win any more games. And so it's one of those things like it was a nice upset, especially if you're a Tennessee fan and you don't like Florida. Which is weird to say because I was born and raised in Florida, but that's a different topic for a different day. The last upset that was just kind of it was really, I would say probably the one that really kind of all took us by surprise was Air Force. Army has been atrocious all year.
It's a way of saying it.
Like, I mean, they have not shown up in almost any of the games they've played.
No.
But this game they decided, and I guess there must be some rivalry there. I wonder why.
I mean, if you're gonna show up to any game in the year, you're gonna show up to your rivalry game,
right?
Like,
yep. And so Air Force did their Air Force lost in the most glorious fashion I've ever seen, to a team that barely could ever put points on the board, and this. And they just looked incompetent. Like it was honestly
shut out.
Basically as close to a shutout as you possibly could get. And so
not quite. They scored 3.
Well, I said it's close to.
If you had a safety, that would have been as close.
Okay. Well, I mean, if you go for an extra point and they block that, they turn that. That's another one.
Yeah, that's who has close. So that's okay. Sorry,
this is the
third closest. Wait, okay, I stand corrected. Like the rest of these potential upsets that I picked, that didn't turn out to be upsets at all. Way to go, Maryland. You get destroyed by Penn State. Wasn't expecting that one. Penn State has not been the best on the road, and they showed up, and I guess they heard me talk about it because they were like, no.
Exactly.
Aller was just like, I'm just going to play the best game I've ever played, and that's what he did.
Forget you, Mike.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Forget you, Michael.
Call out you, the tailgate. Stupid tailgate. Call out me. And then you had USC. USC did not. They could not overcome the deficiencies in their defense against Washington's very anemic defense. Because we were talking about like USC being 119, Washington's 95th in total defense, so they're not good either.
It's it's 95 out of 100, depending on how you look at it. They probably look at it that way,
Yeah,
that's what I'm starting to think.
Yeah,
are you saying that their academics aren't that great?
Shoot, doesn't look like it.
It's what it feels like at this point.
Yep.
They but then the last one was LSU. I would say that's the close that game, aside from it being really the closest. It might not have been the closest in point spread, but it was definitely the closest in the sense of actual talent on the field.
Yes.
Right.
I would say that's the closest also to a game that could have been decided by a bad call.
That bad call took someone out. So
yeah,
Yep.
And kind of like what we were talking about earlier this year. If you're a player and you make a hit, you make a dirty hit or whatever or a questionable hit, and your hit knocks a player out, you should be out for as long as that player is out. Like it's one of those things. Like if you're ruining that player's chances of also being able to play.
True.
And so it's kind of like what we talked about with Colorado State and Colorado, like that hit on Travis Hunter. And so it's just one of those things. Like I have an issue with how those refs handled that. Because I just feel like they just shrugged it off as, it's definitely not what the problem was. That was definitely not targeting, because it didn't even look like they reviewed it for targeting.
No.
They moved right on, which is very surprising, because you would expect any kind of hit to a quarterback in that region is going to automatically be reviewed.
A game that big, that so many eyes.
A lot of people are watching it, all that stuff. So, but that leads us into this upcoming week. With the upsets. This week I'm not picking 4. So I can at least maybe get back to my 33%, which this one
get 2 right, man.
Well, no, I have to get I'm doing 3 this time. I'm not doing 4.
You got to get 2 right, because you got 25, you got to make up the numbers,
then I'd have 66, and then the math isn't math in there. I'm not good at math, but I ain't bad at math. But my first upset for this week, I've got Kentucky beating Bama. Bama is going to Kentucky. Kentucky's mad. Their fan base is mad.
They're always mad.
I mean, it's the second half of the season. They're gonna be mad. They're not gonna win no more.
I'm just saying, like they've started to find an identity with Leary, and their defense is clicking in ways that I don't think Alabama's played against. Most of the defenses that Alabama's played against have been relatively mediocre, with the exception of Tennessee and Texas A&M. But Kentucky does have a very solid defense. Kentucky's holes that they had in their in spots that they had have seemingly been fixed since the Georgia game. So it's one of those things. Like I feel like while Kentucky is definitely beatable at home, because it's not hard to beat Kentucky at home because they've already been beaten twice. It's one of those things that I think that Kentucky is itching for a really nasty upset. And they have the firepower to do it. They've got the talent to do it. And one of the things that we know about Bama is they don't have the greatest run defense that's out there. They have a decent run defense, but they don't have the greatest one. Yeah,
3 quarters go over 150 yards. So,
but Kentucky's got a phenomenal running back, and that could really mess up Bama if Bama's not careful.
True.
My next one is I've got West Virginia beating Oklahoma.
Okay.
You thinking Oklahoma's gonna have it?
He's getting all the
down.
I guess Oklahoma's not top 10 anymore.
No, they're not.
No, absolutely not.
No, West Virginia is having a better year than people are expecting. They're kind of a sleeper in the Big 12 right now. And again, I see them kind of like what we originally thought Baylor or BYU was going to be. They've kind of turned out to be that sleeper disruptor.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
And so I just feel like they're hunting for some like top 25 knockout. Like that's what they want to do.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not able to kind of have like a top 25 season like yourself, the least you want to do is like, hey, I knocked out at least one top 25 team.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's what's going to happen. The last game that I've got as my upset alert, I've got Ole Miss beating Georgia.
That one I feel like is the most likely one, even though I feel like, it's Georgia.
And they're playing at Georgia. Yeah. It's not like,
it's not gonna be an easy game either way.
How Georgia lucked out in playing majority of their SEC games at home this year is very interesting.
I mean, they went away in a lot of non-conference games versus
it is very tiring to go.
It's exhausting to travel.
Yeah, travel to Atlanta. Yeah. Go there. Oh man,
such an exhausting bus trip.
It's so exhausting. But no, I think Lane Kiffin has not had a phenomenal record against top 10 opponents, and he has not had a phenomenal record late in the season either. Mm-hmm. But this year, he and his team seem different. Mm-hmm. Their defense seems very cohesive. They're actually, to some degree, they seem like one of the most complete SEC teams or teams in general, just across the NCAA.
I feel like they're kind of having like a quiet season.
It's very quiet.
Because every single time I look at them, I'm like, yeah, you guys only have one loss.
Yeah.
It surprises me every single time.
Every time I look at the top 25, I kind of scroll past them.
Well, yeah.
So, I mean, you're just like, oh, yeah, there's Ole Miss, Louisville, or you're just like, okay, yeah, they're there.
Yeah, well, and it's one of those things like we know what Georgia's capable of. Georgia's they're a good team. Yeah. They're not as dominant as they were last year, but they're still a good team. They don't make a lot of mistakes. They do find ways to get unreviewable penalties reviewed. But aside from that, because that's totally not cheating or anything. But aside from that, it's one of those things. Like I think that the air attack that Ole Miss has, Jackson Dart has been incredible this year. Mm-hmm. He is, incredibly accurate. He's very he's dangerous with his feet, and that's the thing is those dual threat quarterbacks. Like Cook lit up UGA this past week, and UGA Georgia doesn't have a good defense against that, like they did last year. And so a dual threat quarterback like Jackson Dart could be very detrimental to him. And so I think that they're going to be there's some depth that that Ole Miss has, because it's the other thing is like people seem to forget Ole Miss doesn't just have Jackson Dart. They went and got 2 other relatively good quarterbacks from the portal during this past offseason. And so it was just one of those things like it's kind of crazy that happened. It was like that they've got 3 kind of in the wings, like really decent quarterbacks that can, if one needs to take a break, they've got a good backup, and then they got a good backup behind that one.
I think Georgia was kind of exposed though this past week in terms of like how their defense kind of responds.
Oh yeah.
So Lane Kiffin kind of being offensive like minded, he's going to be able to see all those ways.
Oh yeah, I agree, and I think Lane Kiffin is starting to settle down a little bit too, which is helping him out. And
I mean, he's staying longer than he normally does.
He's maturing a little bit.
He's still being he still pokes the bear a little bit, which is fun. Just like listening to him kind of be a little crazy, but at the same time, he's one of those coaches that he's definitely seemed to mellow out a little bit. And it seems like he knows that him mellowing out has helped his team stay focused. Because last year they lost all focus once it started coming out that he might take the Auburn job and whatnot. But that leads us into this upcoming weekend with our games of the week. So, Dennis, what you got?
I actually have Utah and Washington.
Yeah.
You know, the 2 games that kind of both the teams are coming out, but like actually some really good matches that Utah blew out, like incredibly, Arizona State 55-3. And then obviously Washington beat USC 52-42, so like they had a high-scoring game.
So you think the pig farmer's going to show up?
That's what I'm kind of wondering. Honestly, like if he shows up and then Utah, if he shows up and then he had a big game in terms of like touchdowns wise. He only had 162 yards the previous week, but he had 4 TDs. Like he was able to shut them out like real quickly.
I didn't say he was going to do well. He's just going to show up.
If he shows up, like depending on which version of him shows up, then. But it should be a good and an interesting matchup for Washington, like playing actually solid defense. And they kind of will let you know more of like, hey, what kind of defense does Washington have? Like if they have like a middle, like an average offense as Utah has against them, are they going to be able to score 4 or 5 touchdowns too? Because then that'll be a question mark. Like, hey, they got lucky playing Oregon and beating them.
Right.
True.
So that's my kind of game of the week. But honestly, I feel like Washington's still going to win it, but I wouldn't be surprised if some big plays in defense on the Utah side.
You don't pick against Utah.
No, I mean, I'm not Michael, though. I'm not Michael. So, like, I feel like Washington's going to be able to win this.
Okay.
Yep.
I mean, they have a 69% chance on ESPN.
All right.
You know?
Well, I'm going to go with the Big Ten game of the week.
Of course.
I've got to. Now,
fair enough.
Michigan, Penn State. I'm going to say Michigan.
Yeah.
Wow.
Go blue, huh?
I'm not saying – listen.
Go blue, you know? Okay.
Yeah. So, if you like offense, do not watch this game. It's
going to be a slugfest.
It is a number 1 defense versus a number 2 defense.
Trench warfare.
So we're going to see. Now, we don't know how many of the signs Michigan has at Penn State. We don't know if Penn State has been able to change theirs in the past couple weeks. So
it'll be challenging.
Well, it'll be challenging. So we'll see. I don't know. I mean, we know they haven't, but so yeah, I think it'll be a fun game. A game that is really going to kind of define the Big Ten. Obviously, there's really only 3 teams in the Big Ten that are up for that top spot, and 2 of them are playing.
Mm-hmm.
One of them's already lost to Ohio State.
That's right.
So we'll see what happens. Go Penn State.
Hey, I you know what? I can second that. Right now, you will not catch me rooting for Michigan for anything, at all. And until we know
relegation.
Yeah,
I'll cheer for them for relegation.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
I mean, fair enough.
Go Michigan.
Yeah. But speaking of another team that I will definitely not ever cheer for, because they're just the Michigan of the SEC, that'd be Georgia. My game of the week is Ole Miss versus Georgia, and again, I've got
that you said the Michigan of the SEC tells you that Michigan's worse. Sorry.
Just yeah, I mean it's pretty bad.
They're the standard.
Yeah,
they both have coaches where people are just like, eh.
Nah, I mean,
questionable.
Smart is a better coach than Harbaugh any day of the week. I think he's.
Well, I was saying the Ole Miss coach, you know.
Oh, Lane Kiffin. Oh, okay, yeah. No, But I'd say, like, again, obviously it's part of my upset, but I just also think it's going to be one of the best games this weekend just to watch. It's going to be you've got one team that's known for putting up a lot of offensive yards, a lot of points on the board, and then you got another team who is not used to playing catch up. And so it's going to be interesting to see if Ole Miss comes in and has game planned well against Georgia. If Georgia's weak or weaker from beating Missouri, didn't mean to say it like that. Sorry, guys. Sorry.
Power 5 after dark. What kind of Saturday was that?
Yeah, that's a different episode. That's locked in our special channel on our Patreon, which we don't have yet. But stay tuned for later. Anyways, with Georgia, like they're coming off of a rough win against Missouri, and Missouri is a very physical team. That they have to beat.
I mean, you beat them. You can't get beat. You gotta get physical. So
yeah, you gotta beat. Anyway, so I feel like Georgia really could come into this game overconfident and underpowered.
I wonder if they're gonna do like their typical start where like, hey, at halftime they're losing by 3, by 7, because that's usually how they are.
They like to do that. Yeah. Again that playing down to competition thing. They
lay it out.
They do to lay it out like that. Yeah. But I think that they can't afford to do that against Ole Miss. Ole Miss has got an offense that'll really exploit that if they're not careful.
And this is the game that Ole Miss should just really kind of foot to the pedal, lay out all the stops. You're not going to lose you're not going to lose by just going out there and going, you know what, let's just go.
I feel like they're going to be deep on offense enough to be able to kind of challenge Georgia all 4 quarters.
Yep. So. Anyways, well, thanks for joining tonight's Tailgate. Grab a drink and join us at our next conversation.